Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Property Buyer and Sellers Podcast. I hope you're well. This week, a topic which is on the minds of many sellers throughout the UK, and it always comes to this question: why is my agent sending people that aren't ready to buy? Now, there are many reasons for this, and it happens all the time. And I know it's really frustrating for you as a seller if you're seeing this, but we have to really wind back to why it happens first of all. Now, any good agent, if you've just gone on the market, they're going to introduce to you all of the buyers that are in the best position first, or they certainly should be selecting those ones out by asking the right questions. What's your buying position? Are you a first-time buyer, investor? Do you have anything to sell? Are you in a chain? And those kind of questions tend to really whittle it down to the people that are in a good position to buy. However, once you've seen all the people that are in a good position to buy, there will be people that aren't yet in a position to buy that might well be, and it could be as little as a week or two away. But it feels like a time waste, I know, and it can be really frustrating. And the old cliche as far as agents are concerned is somebody comes along and says, oh yeah, I'm not on the market yet, but my agent tells me it will go straight away. And that is such a cliche because you don't know your house is going to sell straight away, even if it's really beautiful. And sometimes you just need to hit the market at the right time. And if you're asking a full price for the property, which you should be to try and protect your interest, then it might not be the case that you get a buyer straight away. In fact, I would also go so far as to say if you do get a buyer in day one, then you should be asking if you're on at the right price anyway. Point being that it comes down to what should you do? Should you buy first or sell first? And for many buyers, second time around, remember all they've ever known is the last time they bought. And the last time they bought, what happened was, did they have to do anything first? No, of course not. They just had to go out, find a property, make an offer, and it was all lovely. And of course now everything's different. Why is it different? Because buying and selling is totally different to just buying. And the reason it's so different is that you need to be in a negotiating position that is strong enough to get the best possible deal the other end. What is the art of buying and selling? Well, if you think about it, the art is to buy as cheaply as you can and sell as expensive as you can. How do you achieve that? Well, number one, you start by not being under pressure when you're selling yours. And the problem is this, that when you and the wife go around to see a house and you both love it and you envisage your children out in the garden running around, maybe dad on the barbecue, and it's all going to be fantastic and the dream can be realized, it's very hard to then peg back from that if you don't actually secure the property. So if you're not in a strong position to buy it, the agent, that meaning that are you under offer? No. Then the agent's quite likely to refuse any offers you make and insist on at least the asking price. And even then, when you offer the asking price, it's quite likely that that agent will say, yes, your offer's an acceptable level, maybe, if you're lucky, and that's the best result. However, most of them will say that their clients will not wait for your property to sell. They'll actually want you to now get under offer before they'll consider your offer as agreed and take the property off the market. So what have you achieved by that? Well, this is the problem. You haven't actually achieved anything, have you? You've now got your property to sell, but you're under massive pressure to sell it. And on top of that, you've paid top dollar for the one that you're buying. Well, how do you turn that situation around to your advantage? Well, number one, what you need to do is get a valuation on your property. This is critical for understanding exactly what you might achieve when you go to market. And have three valuations as everyone would. Don't go with the highest one as the one that you're definitely going to achieve, because if you achieve more than the mean average of, let's say, the three valuations, then you've done well anyway. But if you rely on the highest of the three valuations, this could unravel very quickly. So I would even say, go so far as to say, expect the bottom, not necessarily ask the bottom, go maybe mid or even higher. But if you rely on the bottom figure and say to yourself, right, we've got at least X to play with. Now let's go out and see what we can buy for that with our on mortgage. And then you can calculate your figures reasonably precisely so you know what you can afford to buy at. Now, having done that, you need to do your research, but you don't necessarily these days need to go and see a load of properties. Why? Because the information's available to you online. Most listings these days have a floor plan, photographs of every room, and they are reasonably accurate. I'm not saying they're 100% accurate, but if you look on, and the best way to do this is quite simple. If you've never done it before, the best thing to do is think, right, I want to live in, let's say, Virginia Road. So look up a road number within Virginia Road. Let's say look up number 150 Virginia Road. And then that will give you back in whatever area you're in. Say it's 150 Virginia Road in Thornton Heath. then when you Google that, the full postcode will come back. Put that full postcode into Rightmove and it will return results just for that specific area, which will be very tiny, and make sure you include the sold results on that. Now, what you'll find is that there will be nil results quite often with this because you've got a very, very tight parameter. But then Rightmove will offer you the option of going a quarter mile around that area or half a mile around that area, and you'll gradually start to suck other properties in. And if you don't, then your price range is too low. You maybe have to go up a little bit in order to pull some more properties in. If you then see properties are available within your target range, the sort of thing that you would like to live in, and it's affordable to you, that's at the point when I would stop looking. Because if you stop looking at that point, then you don't have that emotional pull of the house that you're looking at before you've sold your own, therefore massive pressure to sell your own, therefore taking the first offer you get on your home. So that's critical. So number one, now you've set the parameters running. You know roughly what you're going to get for yours. You know roughly what you're going to have to pay for another. Now get yours to market, get it on the market, get an offer on it. I know a lot of you are thinking, well, it's chicken and egg, isn't it? Because if I don't find a property, then I can't move, I can't sell. But it has to start from somewhere. And the end it has to start from, best for you, is certainly that you need to sell. And then you can use that sale as a negotiating, bargaining power with your seller. What I mean by that is you can perhaps approach the seller of the property you're looking at and say, well, look, I love your property. I'm not even arguing about the price. I think it's a beautiful house and it's well worth the money. Only problem is I expected to get X for mine and I've got less. So I can offer you, but I can only offer you, whatever it is less. Now, if that property's been on the market for a while, now you're under offer, that agent will be speaking to that seller. And quite often, if you're the best offer that's come along right now, they might say to the seller, look, I know it's less than you want, but this guy's real. He's jumped through the hoops. He's got under offer. This could be real for you. It can move you. It might be less than you want, but it is a real offer on the table that could get you to the place you want to go to. And often from there, the seller might consider it, and then they'll go out and start looking. And subsequently, because they've got you as a buyer and they've now got a completed chain, they have a much better chance of then negotiating up the chain a better price as well. And if they do achieve that better price, quite often they'll accept that lower figure because it gets you all moved. And that's the ticket, isn't it? That's what we all want, is to actually move. So if your agent's sending you people that aren't ready, that probably means that they've exhausted the ones that are ready. And now what they're doing is trying to pick up the ones that might sell. And although they're not as good at buyers, people that look at houses, in my experience, a lot of people think, oh, there's a lot of window shoppers out there. There aren't. In my experience, 99% of the people that are looking really do sincerely want to move. They may be a bit deluded about what they're going to get for theirs or what they're going to pay for yours, but certainly all of them genuinely feel that they want to move. And if they're realistic about the price that they're selling for, people that aren't in a position to buy right now could be in a position to buy tomorrow. So that's why your agent's sending you people that perhaps you think aren't ready, because a lot of agents don't educate their own sellers into the best way around to work this. So when I'm on evaluation, quite often I'm having this discussion with my clients and saying, look, really, before you go out finding, let's get you under offer so you're in a good position to buy. Of course you need to do your research, and of course you need to be sure that what you want is available to you at the price point that you've chosen. And if you can't find what you want where you want, you've only really ever got two choices: more money or other areas. And of course, for most of us, the money is the money. We are where we are. So then other areas. What I mean by that is, if you start to cast that search even wider, perhaps a quarter mile, half mile, 1 mile, 5 miles, 10 miles, eventually you'll start to suck in other properties that suit your requirements, but perhaps they're not where you thought you wanted to be. Well, at least you're finding things that might suit your requirements. And of course, there is another choice, and that is lower your size. If you can't find what you want, perhaps if you change that requirement for a detached house into a semi, or from a semi to a terraced, or maybe that off-street parking's not as essential as you thought, and so on and so forth. Eventually, you will start to drag in more properties and hopefully find a home that's suitable for you. But it is a quandary. A lot of vendors say to me, I'm worried that I sell and I can't buy. And the answer to that question is quite simple. Just be honest with your buyers. Transparency is the key. So when a buyer comes to us and says, look, I've got to get in next week and we've got a seller that needs to find somewhere, we say, look, this property is not for you, because they can't move in a week's time. If you're prepared to be patient, then likelihood is they will find somewhere, because they are serious about selling. However, you will have to jump in the chain like most of the UK, because not many of us really have a spare property that we can just pop into and wait while the sale goes through. So that's the best way in our experience of making it work for you. And I hope goes some way towards explaining why you're seeing those buyers that aren't really buyers or aren't ready. And in terms of qualification, lots of agents will say to you, yeah, we qualify every buyer. They don't. They ask the right questions. That's what they should be doing. But when it comes to qualification, the qualification meaning checking that they've got the money in the bank and everything else, and maybe speaking to a mortgage advisor within their company, they're always motivated to do that because many are owned by financial institutions, many of the big agents, and actually get huge commissions from those financial services referrals. And it annoys me a little bit because it seems to me that quite often they're so busy trying to talk to people about mortgages that actually they miss why they're there, and that is to sell vendors' homes. So what we do here is we ask the right questions, and then if somebody makes an offer, then we delve deeply and we look at making sure that the finances are in place as they've suggested, the deposit is available, is in the UK, and is in cash as they suggested, so that we can make sure that we advise our vendors properly on where the offer is. Also, it's about personality. Quite often we're talking to our sellers about not just the money, but the likelihood of this particular buyer being the sort of buyer that will be solid going forward and not messing around. Somebody that's worried about the slightest thing, for instance, might well be the same kind of person that's going to balk at any survey. Because remember, with property, you're not buying something brand new. You can't expect everything to be beautiful, and you can't expect certainly your surveyor to go around and say, oh wow, what a wonderful choice you've made, as some buyers do expect, when in fact a surveyor is there to make sure you know about everything bad, everything bad. And that means perhaps the wiring's not brand new. They might recommend a wiring test, perhaps they recommend a drains test, perhaps they recommend a roof inspection. And these things are quite scary, especially for a first-time buyer. So when we're looking at offers and trying to weigh up which are the best ones, quite often part of our advice actually stems around, is this buyer the most likely to buy it in the sense of not worrying about the slightest thing? Because if they're going to worry about the slightest thing, chances are they're going to want to renegotiate the price, and that's not where we're at for most sellers. We need people to understand what they're buying and the fact that they're not buying something brand new, and there will always be bits and pieces picked up in a survey, because that's what surveyors are there to do. You know, it might this, it may this, and quite often they're just covering their own backs, because of course if you go in there and they haven't mentioned that you need to check X, Y and Z, then they could be held personally liable. So you can always expect surveys to read as it might, it may, have an inspection, That's just standard stuff and needn't worry you. And as a seller of a property, the good thing is that when you've had a property that you've owned, you know that there are shortcomings in property. As a first-time buyer, you don't know that every property's got nuances and little things and little irritations. And if you get the slightest bit of damp come up on a survey on a new property, it probably won't concern you too much. But for a first-time buyer, especially a really cautious one, this could be the end of their world, and the end of yours too if they pull out. So that's why when we're looking at offers, we're also thinking not just what is the offer, but what is the personality of the buyers, and do we think that it's going to be a suitable sale for our vendor client? That is the seller. So I hope that's helpful to you. Thanks for listening. As always, we'll be back same time next week with another edition. Till then, look after yourselves and your family. Ciao.